Welcome to the deep dive. I want to start with a question, one that goes a bit deeper than the usual headlines. What if big, essential parts of your job, not the title, but the actual stuff you do every day, are just, disappearing right now? Not next year, but this month. And what if it's all happening silently? No big layoff announcement, just this quiet, sinking feeling that what you do, your ability to execute, isn't the main value you bring anymore. That structural shift, that's really the core of the sources we've stacked for today. We're going to do a very precise deep dive into this idea of role compression. And we're going to try to understand the paradox of a job market that feels both tight and just deeply frustrating for white-collar workers. We want to get past the emotion and find the patterns that explain this silent shift.
If we translate that anxiety into measurable patterns, the situation becomes much clearer. What is happening is not elimination, it is optimization. The recent AI updates, they didn't replace entire job titles. They optimize workflows. And historically, optimization, it always comes before any visible change in headcount. The real pressure point is task-level replacement. That's always the starting point for any major industrial disruption. So we have to shift our focus completely away from the job title and onto the underlying structure of the work itself.
Okay, let's unpack that. That's structural focus. If we accept that this threat is silent, if it's targeting the workflow, then we have to sort of challenge how we even define a job. If a job isn't a title, if it's just a stack of tasks, then where is this new AI really targeting the most?
The key pattern we observed in the data is exactly that. A job is a bundle of tasks. AI attacks these bundles. It does it by removing friction and taking over the execution layer. The technology didn't suddenly develop high-level judgment. It just became incredibly good at execution. Fast, cheap, and this is the crucial part, good enough for most standard business needs. Businesses optimize for speed and cost, not for philosophical perfection.
Good enough. That's a really important phrase. So what falls into that good enough basket? What are we talking about here?
Well, the sources identified clear patterns. Things that show up across multiple industries. We're talking about first drafts of reports, summarizing meeting transcripts, generating email replies, content outlines, basic data cleaning, and first pass customer support answers. These are repetitive, low context tasks, and they are highly vulnerable.
This is the distinction we really need to focus on, I think, because the sources give this really specific example of how this compression works using the junior analyst role.
Exactly. Consider that junior analyst. Before, this person spent hours, maybe days, just cleaning data, running basic analyses, making standard charts, and drafting summaries of what they found. The output was valuable, sure, but the time it took was massive. Now, an AI tool does the cleaning, runs the analysis, generates the charts, and drafts the insight summaries.
And the process that used to take 2 days, now it's 20 minutes. That's an incredible increase in speed. But okay, here's the question that pops into my head. If your output capability just went up tenfold, shouldn't a company scale up and hire more juniors? Why does the data suggest they're just shrinking the team?
That is a critical question, and it reveals the management decision pattern. Think of it like a factory. The robot didn't replace the foreman. It replaced the need for dozens of people whose only job was to tighten 1,000 bolts a day. That job is gone. The company just absorbs those execution tasks into the background process. And they keep only the people who can manage that process, the ones who can ask the right strategic questions and interpret the results for the decision makers. They don't need 5 juniors doing execution anymore. They need one strong analyst focused on judgment. The value bar is it's quietly risen. It's absorbed the lower rungs of the ladder.
And you see that same pattern, that same structure repeating in completely different departments. You mentioned content, customer support.
Yes. If AI can draft a perfectly average article or generate SEO captions, why would a company pay a full-time human salary for that? They won't. They'll pay for strategy, for a deep understanding of the audience, for unique storytelling, tasks that require high context, judgment. It's the same in customer support. AI handles the repetitive stuff, FAQs, refund status, order tracking. The humans are kept for the real emotional escalations, for complex retention talks, high-value problem solving. The brutal reality here is that people aren't losing value because AI is so intelligent. They're losing value because their role was focused entirely on that easily automated execution layer. What's fascinating here is that this isn't specific to any one sector. Across analysis, content, support, the same compression pattern just appears again and again. It's a structural change in how white-collar work is organized, much like automation changed manufacturing floors decades ago.
That's a powerful idea, that structural change. But if AI is compressing roles and making work more efficient, and companies are still posting millions of job openings, Why does the job market feel so, I don't know, broken? It feels abundant and yet emotionally draining at the same time. Sources call it brutal and disheartening.
This disconnect. Yeah. This is where we have to look for the silent signals from businesses. The signals that show automation has already arrived. Most people are missing them. We found 4 key signals in the sources that tell you compression is active. The first, and maybe the most alarming, is the thinning out of junior white-collar hires. Entry-level roles are like the canary in the coal mine here. This is why we're seeing what one source calls the graduate paradox. Recent college graduates are actually facing higher unemployment rates than some people without degrees because that entry-level on-ramp, it's been removed, or at least heavily compressed.
That's wow. That is a harsh observation. The traditional path into a career, the years you spend just learning the ropes on execution tasks, this is just collapsing. What else? What else should you be looking for inside your own company?
The other 3 signals are visible internally. Second, look for faster output expectations, faster cycles. If a project that used to take 3 weeks is now expected in 1, that speed is not human. Third, check your team sizes. Smaller teams are producing the same or even more output than they did 18 months ago. They're not working harder, they're just using tools that weren't available a year ago. And finally, just look at the job descriptions themselves. They're expanding. They're demanding higher-level judgment, strategic skills. They aren't narrowing down to focus on clear execution tasks. And this leads to our key insight here. When output stays constant but headcount shrinks, or when the skill demands increase that dramatically, automation has already arrived.
That explains so much. It explains that feeling of dysfunction that job seekers are talking about. It's not just the market, it's the system itself feeling like it doesn't reward effort fairly.
And that dysfunction is amplified by algorithmic gatekeeping. AI has flooded the hiring process too. Resume screening software, automated bots. They were meant to handle volume, but they've just created this massive congestion. HR teams often don't calibrate these tools correctly, so they end up rewarding keywords over actual competence.
It sounds like a system that's actively sabotaging itself.
The research on this is, well, it's staggering. High-performing candidates, people with complex or unusual career paths, they are now 19% less likely to be hired. Meanwhile, weaker, algorithm-friendly applicants, those who just mimic the keywords, they get a 14% boost in their success rate. Merit is being outpaced by mimicry.
Okay, so we have AI absorbing the low rungs of the ladder inside the office, and then algorithmic dysfunction blocking the high-quality people from even reaching the high rungs that are left.
This brings us to the core issue of value, right? If execution is automated, where does human value even come from now? We have to look at this value chain pivot. Yes, we have to clearly define where human value resides. There are 3 levels. First, execution value. That's doing what you're told efficiently. This is where AI is now highly competitive. Second, decision value. That's deciding what should be done based on provided data. AI assists here, provides context to data points very quickly. But the highest level is judgment value. This is about framing the problem in the first place, making the final call, and then owning the outcome, the accountability. We can state it plainly. AI replaces execution first, then it moves to assistance. But it struggles fundamentally with ownership and accountability. Human value must now be in high context, problem definition, and that final judgment.
But wait, if AI has destroyed that entry ramp, the execution value jobs, how does a junior professional just jump straight to judgment value? That sounds great in theory, but it seems impossible. How do you learn the context if you're not allowed to do the work anymore?
That is the structural difficulty. And that is why adaptation is mandatory, not optional. The professional training path is broken. You used to learn context by doing things over and over, cleaning the data 50 times. Now the learning has to shift from doing to diagnosing, from doing to framing. Instead of learning how to clean the data, the junior professional must immediately learn how to ask, is this even the right data set for this business question? Or what financial risks are not being captured in this automated summary? The skill has to pivot from efficiency to critical thinking right at the start.
And this blockage of early career paths, like the data shows with the graduate paradox, this leads to the really long-term consequences, doesn't it? We're feeling this high unemployment anxiety today, but the sources are pointing to a huge labor shortage just down the road.
That contradiction is striking. Today's competitive market, it's an illusion. It's built on short-term efficiency gains. If you look at the demographic trends, the U.S. labor force is quietly shrinking. Birth rates are well below replacement level. And the cohorts that are said to replace the retiring baby boomers and Gen X, they are considerably smaller. One university, Georgetown, estimates this will result in a shortage of 5.25 million skilled, college-educated workers by 2032. The danger here is acute. If those formative early career roles are blocked today because of role compression, then the skills gap we're going to need in the next decade is being manufactured right now, in real time. It is the self-inflicted wound built on short-term optimization.
So the message for you, the listener, is pretty clear. Stop trying to compete with AI. It's futile. You have to move up that value chain immediately towards judgment and accountability. If AI is a powerful amplifier for people who already think well, then it's also a powerful exposer of those who only execute.
The time for introspection is now. We need diagnostic tools, not just motivation. You must analyze your own workflow today, asking 3 very precise questions. 1. Which of my routine tasks can be automated today? 2. Which decisions I make depend entirely on my unique, high-context knowledge of the company or the client? And 3, this is critical. Where do humans still sign off and hold financial or legal accountability? We can offer the most powerful diagnostic line for this adaptation. If AI can complete your task without asking clarifying questions, questions that require context only you possess, then that task is already vulnerable. We have to reinforce this strategic perspective. AI is not here to replace humans broadly, but it is unequivocally here to replace slow workflows, low-context tasks, and repetitive thinking. This shift is manageable, but it demands urgent adaptation over fear.
That really is the essential takeaway, isn't it? The real question isn't whether your job title disappears, but whether the tasks that are left, whether they even require a full-time person. The value bar has risen dramatically. The expectation is now judgment, not just diligent execution. And what the sources reveal is that this white-collar crisis, this weird mix of abundant openings and a scarcity of actual hires, it's fundamentally about a failure of trust in our systems. The idea that effort should correlate with outcome. When capable people are filtered out by opaque algorithms, or when the first rungs on the career ladder are just destroyed for short-term efficiency, cynicism grows. Fixing this is going to require more than just job growth. It's going to demand a reassertion of human judgment over automation, of long-term skill building over short-term efficiency. So we'll leave you with this thought. Ask yourself today, is the system where you work designed to measure human judgment? Or is it just measuring automated execution? Because if it's the latter, you are working with an outdated map of value, and that is the real shift we all have to confront.